Hi everyone, and welcome to my new short series, Strings on a Budget, where I give my best tips to help you start learning a string instrument when you're on a budget. I know that money is tight right now. Lots of things are jumping in price, and classical music has always been an expensive hobby or career to get into. The instruments are expensive, the training is expensive. A lot of youth orchestras and learning programs are pay to play. So it is hard if you don't have a lot of money to begin with to start learning a string instrument. Even if you're not interested in playing classical music on a violin, viola, cello, or bass, it can be expensive, and there are a lot of kind of hurdles to get through to start learning one of these instruments. So if you're new here, hi, my name is Elizabeth. I run the blog lifefromtheviolasection.com, where I share my favorite practice tips, general advice, and tech for musicians. I am so thankful that my parents prioritized my music education and were able to get me the instruments that I really wanted to learn and take me to private lessons throughout my childhood, and even helping with college to pursue classical music as a career. I now teach private music lessons on viola, violin, and piano. And music is an expensive thing to learn if you want to get really serious about it. And I wish that it wasn't that way. I really do. But despite all of that, there are ways that you can kind of bring the cost down. So today we're mostly going to talk about gear and accessories and how you can save on those, and what things you should still splurge on and what things you can kind of cut back on. So just getting an instrument first. A lot of music stores around here in Richmond, Virginia, we have Music and Arts. That's a large chain that's in the area. A lot of music stores will have rental programs, and a lot will have rent to own. And so after making a certain number of payments, you now own that instrument. A lot of times you can trade up, and after renting for so long, you get a credit for some amount of money, and then you can buy a nicer instrument or a larger instrument when you need one. A lot of times with these rental programs too, as you get older and you need a larger instrument, you just trade for a larger size. So if you don't have a lump sum of money to put down on an instrument, renting is a great option, especially if you can get into a rent-to-own option. I just realized that my microphone was not set up properly, so I'm sorry for the change in the audio quality. But when you're learning a string instrument, if you are small, when you start out, you'll play on a smaller size instrument, and as you grow, you will eventually get to the full-size instruments. So if you have a child that is learning a string instrument, you might not want to buy the first one or the first couple instruments that they play on, because they'll only need those for a year or two until they grow. So renting is a good option if you foresee a size upgrade in the future. Okay, so once you have your string instrument, there will be a couple accessories that you will need. A lot of times if you're going to a music store, the instrument that you rent or buy will come with a bow, a case, and usually some complimentary rosin, maybe even a cleaning cloth. So if those things come with the instrument, then you are great. That was already in your price. If not, then there are things that you will want to get. I'm not going to talk about bows because those go along with the instrument, and it would be rare to get a starter instrument that didn't have a bow. So first up is rosin. Rosin is essential when you're playing a string instrument because it provides the grip needed on the bow hair to actually get some friction against the strings. Some very cheap rosins just do not work very well. So if you get one with the instrument from a music store or something, test it out first, see how it sounds. If the instrument and everything sounds absolutely awful and you feel like it's not your playing, then the rosin can sometimes be the issue. So a lot of people starting out don't know this, but when you get a fresh cake of rosin, that's what we call it, it will look shiny. I think it looks kind of like Jell-O. It's the forbidden snack. You want to take, it's going to be super shiny, but we need this to powder up onto the string. If you don't do this, it's going to take a while for the rosin to start actually working. So what I do is I take a pair of scissors or a knife and I just score the top of the rosin. Sometimes I'll make a nice little like diagonal diamond kind of pattern. And then you'll see that the dust particles start to come out. That's when the rosin has really gotten started. So I always score up the rosin first to get it started, and then it takes a lot less rosin to get a new sound on your instrument. So rosin prices can range quite a bit depending on what you buy. I personally use Motria Gold rosin on my viola. I've had this one for quite a few years now, I think since 2018 or so. So you can see, even as a professional, it takes a while to get through rosin. So at least if you're careful with the rosin and it does not shatter by dropping it, this can last for a really long time. I believe this one is about $20, but I will put whatever price I can find online on the screen. On my violin, I use Barnardel rosin. I believe this one is about $15. And I've had this one for a year now. I don't really perform on the violin right now. So it's just, I use this maybe once or twice a week when I'm teaching and I feel like I need some more rosin. So after a year, this rosin has very minimal use. So at least with rosin, as long as you're careful with it and you don't drop it and break it, it can last a long time. So it's not a bad investment. So just be careful with your rosin. This is made out of tree sap, and if you drop it directly on the ground, it probably will shatter. Now, if you've got some larger chunks, you can just use those, or you can also grab like a tiny little container and microwave it just a little bit. Be very careful, just to melt it and reform it into a bigger chunk of rosin. So that's that. So an important part of having a string instrument is maintaining it. They're expensive and you want to be careful with your investment. Rosin will kind of solidify on an instrument if it's left there for a long time, especially if you live in a humid environment. So a cleaning cloth is essential. This is my cleaning cloth in all its dirty glory. Actually, I washed it not too long ago, but this is just a microfiber cloth. If you have any clean microfiber cloths in your home, they can be used on an instrument. So you don't even need to go out and buy one if you already have one. Just make sure that it hasn't been used on anything like greasy or disgusting. So what you want to do when you're done playing is wipe down the strings to get rid of all the rosin dust buildup. Wipe down the fingerboard. I will usually feed my cloth in between the strings and the fingerboard. And then the body. The body is one of the most important parts to do because the rosin can stick to this and really disintegrate the varnish on the instrument. The second most important part to clean on the instrument is the strings themselves, because strings are pretty expensive. So I'm sorry if this sounds awful, not too bad. I really wrap the cloth around the strings and try to get all of the rosin off. Rosin buildup will make strings degrade a little bit faster, and you want to keep these good for as long as you can. All right, next up, if you're starting to learn a string instrument, you'll want a tuner and a metronome. Now, traditionally, these would be separate objects, and then they were kind of built into one unit. And now we have apps, and there are a lot of great free apps out there. In the past, I have used Pro Metronome. Just the free version is fine. And the tuner made by Piascore, or Piascore, I don't know how it's said. Those were fine options. There are some ads. Oh, it's called Tuner Lite, and it looks like this. Okay, those are free options. My very favorite tuner and metronome app is Tonal Energy. That one is $5.99, I believe. I just made a video on it. Definitely check that out if you would like a paid app, but you can totally get by and thrive on free apps. That's totally fine. So at least if you have a device that can use apps, then you've got that for free. 99% of the time, if you get a string instrument, it will come with a case, unless you're buying a very fine instrument, then you might have to buy them separately. But, you know, most cases, whatever you get with your instrument will be fine for your instrument. Now, if it's falling apart, that is a good thing to upgrade so that your instrument is very well protected in case you drop it, if you have to go through extreme weather to get to your lessons or to school or anything. Definitely protect your instrument. That's one of the best things that you can do to save money. Then we have for upper strings, shoulder rests, and for lower strings, rock stops or kind of a rubber tip for the end pin. I would not really skimp on a shoulder rest as an upper strings player. I personally love to play with a shoulder rest. Some people will play without one. Sometimes for very young kids, it will be more comfortable for them to play without, or for them to have a little sponge. The sponges are usually $5 to $10, and you can even use a smallish sponge on a larger and larger instrument. So if you are very comfortable using a sponge as a shoulder rest, then that can grow with you as you get bigger instruments, or, if your neck gets taller, then that might not work anymore. Personally, my favorite shoulder rest is the Everest, and it's not the cheapest shoulder rest, but is by far not the most expensive. I highly recommend this one. Almost all music stores sell them, and I think it's really comfortable. If you can, try out some shoulder rests, whether that's at school or at a music store when you're getting your instrument. Choose the one that's comfortable for you, and if it's below $30, $35, then I think that's about as good as you're gonna get. If it is above $35 or $40, there are cheaper options out there that I think would be just as good. So here's where I think you can save when you're starting to learn a string instrument. Number one is getting free apps for a tuner and metronome. And even if you need to learn some music theory, or just want to look up some online lessons, those are free resources. Microfiber cloths are pretty easy to find, even at dollar stores, at thrift stores. Mine is from a car show and it was like $1. They're all over the place. You might even have one laying at home already. You don't need to buy a fancy branded one from a music store. I would not cut corners on strings because despite their disgusting price, the more expensive strings generally do sound a lot better. Very cheap strings will often have kind of small, tinny, not very complex sounds. So getting those more well-known brands, I personally recommend dominant strings to basically any student, just because they're reliable and they have a good sound. It's gonna be better than just buying more of a generic sort of string. There aren't really generic brands for strings, but I just mean something like less common. Good strings should hopefully last you a little bit longer than really cheap ones anyway. Some strings won't last a super long time, and that's just the nature of strings. They're finicky, they're annoying, but cheap strings will sometimes die pretty fast. Next, I would not cut corners on anything that helps you play with more comfort, like a shoulder rest or a rock stop, or even a heightened chin rest if your setup is really uncomfortable. You want to be comfortable when you play, and playing with bad posture or having discomfort can lead to longer term problems down the road, both physically and technique wise. So make sure that your setup is good and that you are comfortable when you play. That's going to set you up for more success. I want to share a bonus tip too. If you need some music, go to imslp.com because those are all free scores that you can download. They're all within the public domain, so they can be shared for free. So if you need some music and you can't afford books or buying a hard copy of something, see if it's on IMSLP, or even search for some keywords with IMSLP, and you can find a lot of really great music there. This is not sponsored, but I've been using them for 15 years at least, and it's part of my weekly routine as a teacher is downloading something off IMSLP because it's free and the scans on there are really great. All right, so I hope this is helpful. Playing a string instrument can be very expensive to get into, but there are ways that you can cut the costs a little bit, and knowing where you can and can't cut corners is so helpful to be able to make really good informed decisions with your budget. Let me know what questions you have about getting started as a strings player when you're on a budget. If you'd like some more personalized recommendations, I can offer those. Just leave any and all thoughts and questions down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will share a part 2 with you very soon.